everybody, and welcome to Performer Talk with me, your host Simon South. Hello, welcome back. I know we've been on a bit of a hiatus for the past 3 weeks because we've been sorting out this lovely space that you can't see because you're on the other side of the camera. But honestly, it's nice and it's big and it looks beautiful, and yeah, so we've got this whole new space, which is brilliant. I've got a new chair. It's a swivelly chair. I'm very excited with the chair. It's very good. So yes, that's why we've been a bit quiet recently. But also as well, the last video that I did all about how coronavirus is still affecting performers and stuff like that. It was a bit of a hard-hitting one. I know I had someone very, very lovely in the comments saying, you know, keep your chin up, everything will be all right, and thank you so much to that person. But yeah, it was a bit of a hit. It hit me a little bit after doing that, and needed a little bit of me time. But anyway, we are back here in front of you on the YouTubes with a swivelly chair, which is very exciting. So what we're going to talk about today? Well, considering that we are still, despite everything, in lockdown, how exciting for everyone. But we do actually have an end date, a hopeful end date, which has been put in place by our Prime Minister and the government and that kind of thing, which is brilliant, which is good. So just as long as everyone else stays indoors and does what they're told, then hopefully that end date will stay there, which would be lovely. But what are you going to do till then? You know, maybe you've run out of things to do. You've completed all those jigsaw puzzles that you bought for, you know, years and years and years by your great Auntie Sue. You know, you've done them. You've just completed Grand Theft Auto 5 and Cyberpunk 2077. So what's left to do? So that's why I'm here, to try and help you get some ideas on what to do next during your lockdown situation, especially for performers, because obviously a lot of us are getting down about all this whole thing, and it is becoming it's becoming very apparent on the brain, the fact that because we aren't out doing what we normally do, how it's affecting us, and we're slowing down. A lot of us are slowing down. So it's trying to think of things to be able to keep us up there and keep us motivated and keep us going. So on that note, without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so here we have the top 5 things to do whilst in lockdown to help you as a performer to try and think of other things to do so that you don't get that bored. Number one is a very good one, a very easy one, a very simple one, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, find a new hobby. Now, I know that it's not as easy as it sounds. However, trying to find something that is a hobby that will complement something that you already do. So, for instance, if you are into juggling, then you might think, oh, you know what? I always needed a new costume to do that specific juggling act. So why don't you spend a few hours on YouTube, or spend a few hours looking to try and find a sewing course on the internet, and then that will teach you how to make that costume. I know I have been making my own ties in my spare time. Not this one. This is too good for me. But I have made my own ties and pocket squares, bow ties, because there were certain things where I was like, you know what, I always wanted a tie to match this thing, and now I've made one, so brilliant. Also certain elements like coding. You might want to get into coding because there might be certain things that have to do with your act where you could create something where a thing happens. You know, you might want to put in a timer where at a certain time there's a big flash, and you could do that by getting an Arduino and stowing it all together, but also as well as that, using an Arduino mini computer or a Raspberry Pi to create sort of, you know, a little button system, so that when you're on Zoom doing a Zoom show, if you do have Zoom shows, instead of having to go, you've got your button and that goes underneath your foot, and you just press the button, and when you press the button it switches camera. So there's loads of different things you could do with that, so there's another thing that you could look into. There's also loads of other different aspects of performing that we don't necessarily do as performers. A lot of us maybe take it for granted that other people will know that. But little things like, lighting direction, knowing where your lights are going to be and finding out more about lighting so that when you turn up to your venue, you can go, oh, what are this lights like? What are these lights like? And that kind of thing. So finding a new hobby to be able to help and go with your set and what you currently do, even if that hobby might be, for instance, just saying that you're going to play Magic the Gathering for a bit, because maybe something to do with Magic the Gathering can then be put into something that you do further on along the way. So just find that hobby and enjoy it and love it. And you don't have to be the best in the world at it. For instance, I've taken up the harmonica. I can only play 2 songs on it, but it's all good, I enjoy it, it's good fun, and I like it. And hopefully at some point, maybe they'll interact together and I'll be able to put magic with the harmonica, and we'll see what happens. So there's number 1. Tip number 2! Now, tip number 2 is probably something that we are all doing anyway. And that is work on your original material, as in work on what you've been doing for the past 10, 15, 5 to 1 year before all this thing kicked off. Because when it all does come back, when the performing does come back, there will be so many of us that are under-rehearsed because we haven't actually gone and done a gig in about a year. So this is the perfect time to just go, you know what? Okay, I've not done this thing in ages, so why don't I just have a practice of doing this thing again? And you'll be amazed how having that year out of doing the same thing over and over and over again, for instance, how now you might look back at it and go, yeah, it doesn't really have the same flow, and then that allows you to update it, because some of us can get so stuck in our ways performing things a certain way that when it comes to redoing them and rehashing them, we don't want to. Whereas now we've had that time out to go, you know what, I've not done a gig in a year, and you've had that time out, and you'll go back to it and you'll go, yeah, that thing didn't really work there, or it doesn't work now. For instance, especially if you're looking at things like having items in your mouth. For instance, if you're a ping pong juggler and you've got the thing, people not necessarily ready for that straight out of this lockdown. So what can you do instead? What can you do to adapt it? Magicians, card to mouth, gone. Can't do it for about, I don't know, another year maybe, something like that. So you have to find something else, fill it in with something else. That one trick that you've always gone, what would work well instead of card to mouth? This! But I love card to mouth. Now you can't do card to mouth, or at least you can't for a while, so do the other one. It'll be just as good, and it gives you the opportunity as well to kind of almost start again, but it's starting again with all the magic experience and all the other performing experience that you had before. So when you're a singer, there might have been a song that you really wanted to do, but everyone knew you as, I don't know, a country and western singer, but you always wanted to do this Adele song. So now you have the opportunity to do this Adele song and smash it out of the park, because you've been a bit quiet for a year, so it gives you the opportunity to work on other things to make your act more whole and more full together. So there we go, there's tip number 2. Tip number 3! Now, tip number 3 is an interesting one. Tip number 3 relies on 2 things. Those 2 things being that you are very, very bored, and also that you have Netflix, because what I'm going to suggest now is something a bit of an odd one, but I suggest that you find things on Netflix that you really enjoy, or it can be, iPlayer. I'm just using Netflix as a general example here, because most people nowadays do have access to Netflix, whether they're paying for it or they borrowed their best friend's brother's password 10 years ago and they've not changed it. Either way. So what I'm suggesting here is get inspired by your Netflix. Get inspired by some of the things that are on there. There's some amazing shows that are out there at the moment. that you can definitely tap into and hopefully take some inspiration from. Look at what people are watching on Netflix. When you're on Facebook and someone says, oh, I've just watched this amazing thing. For instance, now, at the time of recording this, there was this big thing about the Cecil Hotel, or Cecil Hotel, if you want to pronounce it like the Americans do in the film, in the documentary. So that was a big thing. So most people will know what that is. So therefore, when you create something next, you could relate it to this thing. Tiger King. Tiger King was huge back in March in 2020. Tiger King went massive. And because of that, you could, back then, maybe not necessarily now, although it's still around as a thing, you could maybe do something around Tiger King, do an act around that and around the whole absurdity of it. Look at what else is there in the world. For instance, YouTube with the whole Jackie Weaver Handforth Council thing. Maybe do something, do an act to do with that somehow. Yeah, it won't last forever, but it'd be a good, silly, fun thing to be able to just put on a social media post. Get inspired by what you see around you. Don't just think to yourself, oh yeah, I've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, it'll work. I mean, yeah, it probably will, but taking the time out to just look and watch something which is cinematically gorgeous, that might be absolutely stunning. For instance, like, the new Tribes of Europa that just came out. It's cinematically gorgeous, it's beautiful, and maybe watching that might spark off a little bit of a bit of inspiration for something to do. Or you might prefer something a bit more down the horror line, like Sweet Home, or the slasher, for instance, depending on your audience, depends on what that they might have taken in. There's also, things like there's a glass blowing series. It's a bit like the Great British Bake Off, and other stuff out there. So yeah, just get inspired by your Netflix, watch something that you love, and get really into it, and then think, you know what, I can somehow put these two together. So there we go. There's tip number 3. Tip number 4. Tip number 4, kind of similar to tip number 3, however, we're taking it down a different route, and this is going to be one of those ones that either you agree with or you disagree with massively, and that is stay on trend. Download apps like TikTok, for instance. Get on Reddit. Things like that, because that way you can see what your audience are consuming every single day, and you can see what kind of things are doing the trends going around. So all those like TikTok dances and other stuff. I'm not saying you need to actively go on and put stuff on there, although sometimes it's fun to just put together a little thing and throw it up. But it's just really good to know what other people are consuming, because then when it comes back to performing live, or whether you do a Zoom show or something like that, you can associate it with that. So you might just think of a line to do with a TikTok dance that's quite funny. When it comes back to the norm and everything being back to normal again, you can put those two together and you can say, oh, I bet you did this thing. For instance, there is that trope of as soon as lockdown came in, TikTok got massive amount of people logging into it because there was nothing else to do during the first lockdown. So you may as well take something from that. You may as well get on it. As I say, you don't need to post anything on it, but you can at least just see what the fuss is about, and you can even see what other things are going on. Yeah, it's those little things you can then go and see it and go, yeah, you know what? People might be able to relate to that. So it's looking at the trends that are going on at the moment in the social media world, and taking that and putting it into you and putting it into your act. So there we go. There is number 4. Tip number 5! Okay, this is the last tip. This is the last proper tip that I'm going to give you today, and that is a very good one and a very simple one, and that is tell people that you exist. Remind people of your existence. Remind people that you are there. You know, because people might not have heard from you in a very long time in the world of the internet. And if people haven't heard from you a long time in the world of the internet, then according to them, you don't exist anymore. So try and think up something that you can just post up. Again, if you're not really into social media, then just post up a certain thing, you know, once a week maybe, or once every 2 weeks, just to show people that you still exist, you are still an entity, and you will still be going back to doing your work when all this goes back to normal. If you don't tell people that you're still there, they're gonna think that you're not, and that's how you're gonna lose bookings and stuff. Get in touch with all those people that were booking you before, all those restaurants, all those residencies, or whatever it was, all those people that booked you and cancelled because of the lockdown. Get in touch with all of them, remind them that you're still there, and tell them that you're still there and that you're still ready and willing to come and perform for them. So yeah, there's loads of things out there for you to be able to get in touch with people and stay in touch with people. So that, my friends, is tip number 5. So guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for sticking with me. It was a bit of a long one today, so apologies for that. But yeah, thank you so much. We will be back to posting every Monday, so I will see you on the next video. But until then, if you have any questions or any comments, please do leave them down there in the comment section. That'd be lovely to hear from you. It is always lovely to hear from you, and I can sometimes take a little bit to get back in touch with people, so apologies for that, but I will try and be better at that. If you do like the video, then please do give it a little thumbs up. That'd be awesome. And until next time, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful day, evening or afternoon, and I will see you on the next video. See you later, guys. Thank you. Bye.